22-year-old Trevor Deely disappeared without a trace after a Christmas party, and his case is still one of the most famous in Ireland. The young IT worker left the event alone and stopped by his nearby workplace in the early hours of December 8, 2000. However, CCTV captured a suspicious figure dressed in black lurking around the office building, and that the unidentified man even approached Trevor when he was trying to get in. A wild storm was raging outside, so Deely, after a short talk with a coworker, grabbed an umbrella and left, but the man in black was nowhere by then. The streets were almost empty, and taxi drivers were on strike. He walked along the Grand Canal, and 11 minutes later, he reached the former branch of a bank where another camera recorded him. But then, a few seconds later, the CCTV showed a man dressed in black following him. Since then, no one has seen or heard about Trevor Deely, and no one knows what happened to him. Trevor Deely was born on August 15, 1978, and grew up in Naas, a charming town located about 20 miles southwest of Dublin, Ireland. He was the youngest child of Michael and Anne Deely, following his older siblings, Mark, Michelle, and Pamela. He always had a passion for music and sports, but he wasn't considered particularly gifted athletically, and it took him some time to figure out what he was going to do with his life, just like many others his age. But it turned out he had an affinity for math and problem solving. So after finishing high school, he studied business at the Waterford Institute of Technology and worked part-time in a supermarket. Yet he dropped out in his second year because he didn't like it. Michelle found him a computer course in Dublin afterwards, and he completed it in May 1999, after which he received 3 job offers from various employers, one from a transport company, another from a computer business, and the third from the Bank of Ireland. He ended up working at the IT department of the Bank of Ireland Asset Management in Leeson Street in Dublin city centre, mainly because he listened to his father, who advised him, "Take the bank. Banks are safer than any of the others." He took to it like a duck to water. It was like turning a key in a lock, and he finally found what he really enjoyed, and he seemed to be really good at it as well, Michelle recalled. Trevor's timing couldn't have been more perfect because he became an IT expert in a team of 10 people when the IT industry was on the verge of exploding in the late 90s. Deely recognized the opportunity and took the job seriously. He was described as an exemplary worker, jovial, ambitious, and reliable, who had a great time there with lots of laughs. His manager, Derek Tracy, said, "He was almost the perfect employee. He was reliable, nothing was too much trouble, he was hungry to learn, and he mingled well with everyone in the company. He was a very happy guy. He was one of the nice guys to be around. He never bitched about other people. He had a very good work ethic, and he was very trustworthy. I'm not just saying this because of the situation, but Trevor was really a good guy." The team mostly worked in financial services and investment banking, and Trevor easily got along with his colleagues and clients as well. Outside of the office, his closest friends were Conleth Lunan and Glenn Cullen. The 3 knew each other from Naas and remained close after high school. They even had the same type of Nokia 1610 mobile phone. In their 20s, they continued to visit pubs in Naas together. Their absolute favorite place was the Thomas Fletcher's, and Smithwick's Red Ale was their go-to drink. "We were all ale drinkers, which was quite unusual for that age group," Conleth said years later. The friends recalled that before the ban, Trevor smoked either Marlboro Light or Benson & Hedges, and preferred to use a Zippo lighter rather than matches. "We did practically everything together. I never had an argument with him in any shape or form. Not about girls, not about anything," Glenn said. In the summer of 2000, Trevor and some friends from Naas took a trip to Belfast to visit another friend who was studying at Queen's University at the time. The group met 2 girls there, Kate and Janie, who were students at the University of Anchorage in Alaska. The Americans were vacationing in Ireland, and as it turned out later, Deely had a crush on Janie, and they kept in touch in the following months. On October 7th, he attended the All-Ireland Football Championship final with his brother and friends, and had a great time there. "It was a time when I was really getting to know him. He was no longer my little brother by then, but more of a peer. His working life was just starting. He was starting to have his own money. We might as well have been the same age then, Mark told the Irish Times. A few weeks later, in November, Trevor got the chance to travel to Anchorage through Los Angeles to see the girl. Glenn, who worked as a long-haul flight attendant for Aer Lingus and was entitled to discounts for family and friends, managed to get Trevor a cheap ticket. He returned on December 5th and called it a trip of a lifetime, so apparently, everything was going well for him. After landing in Ireland, the 22-year-old caught a bus and went straight to his parents' house in Naas, completely exhausted due to jet lag. He could only briefly talk to his father, Michael, who worked for the Board Bia state agency at the time and had to rush for a business meeting in Dublin. Trevor's mother made him a delicious steak dinner, but he had to leave after a few hours because his boss was expecting him the following morning. This was the last time the parents saw their youngest child, and this is how we arrive at the time of the disappearance. On December 7, 2000, the Bank of Ireland organized a Christmas party at the luxurious Hilton Hotel on Charlemont Place, and as this was Trevor's second such event, he knew what to expect. The weather was quite stormy that Thursday, but the pubs and other venues were still packed around the city, and Trevor's group visited several of them as well. They started drinking at 6 p.m. at the Copper-Faced Jack's, where the young man had a short talk with his father on his cell phone about some new contact lenses his brother had sent to him. The friends arrived at the Hilton Hotel at around 9 p.m., where they had a fancy dinner while a band was giving a concert, and the guests were dancing. Sometime between 11 and 11:30 p.m., Trevor tried to call Glenn, who was also out drinking with Conleth in Naas, but they couldn't hear each other over the noise, so they decided to catch up later. Shortly after midnight, most bank employees had already gone home, but the 22-year-old and some colleagues, including his manager, decided to carry on partying. CCTV footage showed that Trevor went to the ATM near the hotel at 12:28 a.m., and at 2:30 a.m., he and his friends went to the now-defunct Buck Whaley's, a basement nightclub, where they had some drinks and had a good time, but nothing too crazy went down. People at the event said he was happy and was the soul of the party. Deely left the club alone a little before 3:30 a.m. and headed to his rented apartment in the Renoir complex on Serpentine Avenue in the Ballsbridge district. But getting home was quite a challenge that winter night due to the heavy rain and rough windstorm. The weather forecasts predicted really strong gusts that could reach speeds of 60 to 70 miles per hour, and on top of these, taxi drivers were on strike, so he couldn't even flag down a vehicle. Therefore, Trevor decided to stop by his workplace, 280 meters from Buck Whaley's, presumably to get an umbrella. He was already at the office 10 minutes after the party, and that's when things took a sinister turn. At 3:05 a.m., half an hour before Trevor arrived, the security camera looking at the main entrance recorded an unknown man dressed in black suspiciously standing and looking around, as if he had been waiting for somebody. At one point, the man leaned against the wall with his left shoulder, but interestingly, he never faced the camera, suggesting it was no mere coincidence. Sometimes he would just stand still, and sometimes he would look up and down the sidewalk, as if he were waiting for someone to walk by. Based on his movements and body language, he was probably under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Deely walked by him at 3:34 a.m. while seemingly talking on the phone, presumably calling someone to let him in. But Peter, the security guard, had already removed the chain because of an earlier internal delivery. As Trevor passed him, the man in black turned left, as if he had overheard something attention-worthy, and sneaked closer to the iron gate, probably hoping to get inside the property. Trevor certainly stopped for a moment on the sidewalk, out of sight of the cameras, because the stranger reached the gate before him. At around 3:35, the partygoer was finally seen on the second CCTV, and the two even had a quick conversation. No one knows exactly what they were discussing, but locals say that beggars frequently approach people in that part of the city. He definitely didn't mention this discourse to Carl Pender, the colleague inside running the night shift. While Trevor was trying to get in, the mysterious man ignored him and leaned against the wall. His head tilted forward several times, and he only noticed the IT worker after he was already on the other side of the gate. But it's not over yet. At 3:37 a.m., two more people wearing dark clothes showed up in front of the entrance and left a few minutes later, although they were later identified as colleagues. Trevor came to the workplace soaked to the skin and quickly made a hot cup of tea or coffee in the canteen. It's not entirely clear what he was drinking because various sources state it differently. He chatted with Pender about the office party, wrote down his office tasks for the day, and checked his emails on his computer. According to the co-worker, he didn't seem drunk and could speak coherently. When Trevor came in, he asked me, "Did I have time for a cup of tea?" I said, "Yeah, sure. I just had something to do at that immediate time," and he said, "Grand. I just need to log on for a minute." I'm not sure if he was doing something to do with work or sending an email. I never asked him, Pender stated later. So the two colleagues chatted a little, and then Trevor left the building at 4:02 a.m. with a large promotional ACC Bank golf umbrella and fixed his jacket in front of the gate, but the shady figure was nowhere to be found. He again headed east toward his apartment. Along the way, he tried calling Glenn Cullen, but he could only leave a voicemail because the friend had already fallen asleep and left his phone to charge in the downstairs kitchen. Sometime between 3:55 and 4:05, Trevor said the following: "Hi Glenn, I've missed you there. Just on my way home. All going good. I'll talk to you tomorrow." After listening, the friend deleted the message, so his exact words are no longer available. Detective Sergeant Fitzgerald revealed that the last activity on his phone was at 4:06 a.m. on Friday the 8th. At 4:14 a.m., one of the security cameras once again captured Trevor at the former AIB Bank at Bagot Street Bridge on Haddington Road. The location was about 7 to 8 minutes from the workplace on foot, but Deely took more than 11 minutes to get there, which of course can be attributed to the weather and the fact that he had been drinking before. The camera shows Trevor for the last time at 4:14 and 34 seconds, but 17 seconds later, a man in dark clothes is seen walking after him, perhaps the same person we saw lurking around the Bank of Ireland building. And that was the last time Trevor Deely was seen alive. His apartment was about 30 minutes away. Trevor didn't show up for work on Friday, but his co-workers didn't think much of it since he had been partying late. Some of them tried calling him during the day, but the phone just rang without an answer. Michelle sent him an email asking about the party as well. The sister was in London at the time and tried to speak to him about a present for their parents and called him at least 4 times, but the Nokia just rang again without any response. Deely previously made loose plans with both friends and family for the weekend, so everyone assumed he was with the other. He told his mother he planned to stay in Dublin and do some Christmas shopping, but he had also arranged to meet Glenn and Conleth at Fletcher's on Saturday night. However, when he didn't show up on Monday, his co-workers started to worry. His manager informed the HR department saying, "We have a problem here. This guy is not to be found. We can't get hold of him and we don't know where he is. What should we do?" They learned that no one had spoken or seen Trevor since the early hours of December 8th, so Dara contacted the family to find out if he had gone home for the weekend, but Anne told him they don't know anything about him. The panic quickly overtook the family, and they immediately started the search for the missing son. They reached out to all the known acquaintances of Trevor, including his 2 girl flatmates. One of them was Michelle's friend from Nos, and the 3 had been living together for more than a year by then. Unfortunately, they were away from their shared apartment over the weekend, so they were completely unaware of the disappearance. The father then went to the Renoir complex, but he couldn't get into the flat because he didn't have a key. He tried ringing the doorbell, but no one answered. Michael called his son several times as well, but he was directed to voicemail each time. My head began to buzz eventually when it began to dawn on me. Could he be missing? I was getting more and more concerned, thinking, is this going to be our situation? Is Trevor a missing person now? He said. Later, police searched his room, but they concluded he never arrived back home. His optician brother was informed at around 10:30 a.m. on Monday and rushed immediately to Dublin from his job in Castlebar, more than 145 miles west of the Irish capital, while his wife, who was 3 months pregnant with their first baby, stayed at home. On the night of the Christmas party, the reddish-haired 6 feet 2 inches tall Trevor was wearing a yellow and brown checked shirt, beige-gray corduroy trousers, dark deck shoes with white stripes, and a green padded jacket. Hours after learning about Trevor's disappearance, his friends and family put up thousands of laminated posters throughout the city, handed over leaflets to passers-by, knocked on hundreds of doors, and asked local shop owners, pub staff, and even the homeless if they had any information. In the following days, people who were involved in the search wore T-shirts with Trevor's information. Taxis all around Dublin displayed his missing poster, and even the Bank of Ireland participated. Detective Sergeant Michael Fitzgerald said, "I've never worked on a case where the family was so proactive. The Deelys set the standard for what families do when someone is missing. They were very proactive. The town was postered before we got out of the door," Superintendent Michael Cryan, the family's 4th liaison officer, added. As I said before, Michelle made 4 attempts to call him over the weekend. She believed she heard the phone ringing, although years later she wasn't entirely sure. Regarding this, Dr. Philip Perry, who worked for the Radio and Optical Communications Lab at Dublin City University, explained that a phone in 2000 would have gone dead within seconds of falling into the water. The radio signals would not penetrate more than a few inches of water, so it couldn't ring. If a phone has been in the water since 2000, there may still be a slim chance of getting the SIM out of it and getting phone numbers off it, but that's really all you could get from it now, he said. It seemed logical to check all the cameras in the area, but they couldn't find any more footage of him or the man in black. The main reason for this was that everything was recorded on VHS back then, and in most places, a new video was recorded on the same tape after 24 hours. It wouldn't have been a problem if the disappearance had already been reported on Thursday, but in this case, authorities were 4 days behind. They decided to search the surrounding waters, so members of the Garda Sub-Aqua Unit dived into Dublin Bay, the River Dodder, and parts of the Grand Canal between Bagot Street Bridge and Leeson Street Bridge, but they didn't find anything. Tosh Lavery, a senior Garda with 30 years of experience in the Sub-Aqua Unit and a member of the search team, said, "The canal is an easy place to search. It's like a swimming pool," implying that if Trevor had fallen into the water, they would have likely found him. Unfortunately, they were unable to drain the Grand Canal basin, as it would affect the structural integrity of the surrounding buildings. It was also important that on December 12, 2000, American President Bill Clinton came to visit the country, and the American embassy was close to where Deely was last seen, approximately 0.6 miles or 1 kilometer away in the same direction as his apartment. This is interesting because his security service searched the entire area to the last inch. Garbage bins were emptied, and manholes were sealed and checked, but there was still no sign of Trevor or any of his belongings. And the meticulous cleanup also meant that vital evidence was possibly destroyed. The Irish police sent 2 detectives to Alaska to question the alleged girlfriend, and Trevor's sisters also traveled there on other occasions, but the university student couldn't provide any useful information. It was a burning question. Why did he bother checking his emails if he was going to work in just a few hours anyway? Maybe he was expecting an email from Alaska, but since not all information was disclosed about the messages, we don't know that either. Only that police found nothing significant among them. According to Glenn, Trevor had every girl's email address, and he loved to communicate that way. We also know that before his trip to the USA, Janie tried to convince Trevor not to visit her in Alaska, as she was studying for exams and had classes to attend, but he insisted because he wouldn't be able to take time off work later. "Oh, Janie, I'm only free now, and will be very busy in the office, and I don't know when I'll get away again," he wrote. Glenn also revealed about the late-night call that he had never left his phone in the kitchen to charge before, and even though they were best friends, Trevor had never called him like that before, out of the blue and in the middle of the night. He found it weird that the police didn't want his phone to retrieve the voicemail. They argued that it was because Trevor just promised to call the friend later, and he didn't sound like he was in trouble, and didn't ask for help. In December 2010, the Irish police published a picture of what they thought he might look like 10 years later. Then, in December 2016, they decided to take a fresh look at the case. A few months later, in April 2017, authorities announced that after analyzing the enhanced CCTV footage, they believed the man who trailed Trevor at the AIB bank was most likely the same person who was seen lurking around his workplace. Worth noting that this footage was actually obtained by Conleth, who worked for a communications company that supplied CCTV equipment moments before the AIB bank would delete the recordings. It was also he who managed to gather all available CCTV evidence from street cameras that hadn't been removed or re-recorded over the weekend. In the video, a girl can be seen walking along 29 seconds after the unidentified man, and 35 seconds later, a couple can also be seen walking side by side beneath an umbrella. They later contacted the police and told them it was a complete struggle to walk home that night due to the terrible weather. They had to hold tightly onto their umbrella to keep it from being blown away. The man was really drunk, but the woman wasn't, and she claimed she didn't see Trevor and did not observe anything suspicious along Haddington Road. Even though the visibility conditions were far from ideal, he was just 90 seconds ahead of them. If he had fought the unidentified man trailing him, the couple would have probably walked by them, but the woman insisted she saw nothing untoward, and without any taxis around, police had fewer witnesses to rely on, as they are usually a good starting point in similar cases. The drivers know the streets well, they are sober, and actively searching for potential customers, making them valuable sources of information. Another head-scratching fact is that for some reason, Trevor didn't take the shortest route home. The one he chose was 10 minutes longer, but had a 24-hour spar on the corner of Shelbourne Road and Bath Avenue, so it's possible he headed there to buy something to eat or drink. On the other hand, Haddington Road is a well-lit road, so perhaps Trevor was simply trying to be cautious. In April 2017, Crime Stoppers offered a €100,000 reward for any useful information that leads to the missing IT worker. In August, police began searching a secluded area in Chapelizod, close to Phoenix Park, about 5 miles west of the former AIB bank. They received a tip that Trevor Deely might have been shot dead by a Crumlin-based criminal known to the police, whose gang was involved in drugs and prostitution and operated in the vicinity of Bagot Street, where he disappeared. The informant said that Trevor might have had a fight with the dealer, who wanted to gain access to the Bank of Ireland Asset Management building, and the criminal beat him not far from where he was last seen, put him in a car and drove off with him. The police took this seriously because the same company had already been arrested in 1998 for the murder of Sinead Kelly, a 21-year-old sex worker. The young woman was stabbed 14 times over a debt of 850 pounds near the Grand Canal. The site the informant mentioned was searched for 6 weeks, and for example, a weapon and drugs were found, but none of them were related to the disappearance, and police called it a stash area for criminals. Despite the search was unsuccessful, the police still found the tip credible, but without evidence they could not proceed. In late 2019, the Irish Prison Service, along with Crime Stoppers and the Garda, joined forces to put up posters in prisons appealing for information, but nothing noteworthy yet. Many theories have been proposed about what might have happened to the 22-year-old. The first possibility is a crime of opportunity where a stranger or gang member may have tried to rob Trevor, attacked him in a secluded spot, and hidden his body in an unknown location. The next is a hit-and-run accident where a drunk driver hit him and took his body elsewhere to conceal the crime. However, no evidence supports any of these theories. For example, if there was a car accident, the people following Trevor would have surely noticed it. He was also drinking that night, and many speculated that he could have fallen into the water, but it must be highlighted that he was sober enough to visit his workplace, and the colleague asserted that he didn't seem intoxicated. Pender told detectives that Trevor was aware of his actions, and the CCTV footage from the bank proved that except for a little staggering to his left, he was in control of his movements. It is also unlikely that he would have taken his own life. He just started his adult life, was full of plans with friends and family, found a girl and had ambitions, not to mention he even left himself some reminders of things to do in the office. Lastly, there were speculations about how Trevor might have been involved in a banking scam with those who killed him, but considering that he was just an entry-level employee with little experience and no access to accounts or clearance to move large amounts of money, it is also hard to believe. The family tried to move on over the years, but whenever new developments emerge, old wounds are reopened. They will never give up. They will continue to put in all the efforts necessary to find Trevor. New posters are being made regularly to make sure people don't forget about the case. After the terrible night, Mark decided to stay in Dublin for a while and went home only after 2 months. I came back because I couldn't do anymore. I just ran out of ideas. I made the decision to come home because I said, if I keep going the way I'm going to drive myself absolutely mad, and it's time for life to move on, he explained. Michelle once said, I want closure. I want to know where he is, and I want to know what happened after that last clip on the CCTV footage, and I want to stop all the nightmarish thoughts that you can have, and I want to stop the not knowing. Nothing has been found. There's been zero information or findings. I don't believe people vanish. That makes no sense to me. That's the most agonizing thing. It actually starts to hurt your brain when you think about it. In the early hours of December 8, 2000, Trevor Deely inexplicably vanished into thin air and hasn't been found to this day, and his disappearance remains unsolved.